Hey everyone, it's me, Aaron, and welcome to another episode of Comic Class, the show every single week on this channel where we just geek out about comic books. And normally on this show, I try to put out comic classes that I think everybody would be interested in. Like we try and cover all the big brand new number ones or all the big huge events because I know those are things that everybody's gonna have at least some curiosity in. Or whenever I talk about a specific character or a team, I try to talk about a character or a team that I think everybody would have some interest in. Like, you might not be reading the X-Men, but you know who the X-Men are, so if I make a video about the X-Men, you'll at least kind of be interested in it. However, the book that I'm talking about today, I know that the vast majority of my audience probably have zero interest in this book. You probably didn't watch the source material for it, you probably don't know anything about the characters, so you have really no interest in the comic, but the people who do have an interest in the comic really have an interest in this comic. I have had people ever since I started this channel up contacting me and asking me to talk about the Avatar The Last Airbender books, and recently they wrapped up the very first storyline for their Legend of Korra series, and I was a massive Legend of Korra fan. So I know that for all the people in my audience who don't know what Avatar The Last Airbender is or Legend of Korra is, you probably have zero interest in today's video, and I apologize to you guys about that, but yeah man, I freaking love these characters. I love that television series. I have been looking forward to the Legend of Korra comic series for the longest time, and they finally wrapped up their first storyline. Took them a freaking year to do it, but they finally did it. So yes, today, for me and all the other Legend of Korra fans out there, we are going to discuss the very first Legend of Korra comic book storyline. Also, if you have no interest in Avatar because you never watched the series, oh my god, go watch that series. Holy cow, how have you not done that? Is it on Netflix? Is it on Hulu? It's gotta be on something. Go out there and watch that series. Then when you're done, watch the Legend of Korra series. Okay, as I said, today's episode of Comic Class is kind of really only aimed at those people who were fans of the Avatar and Legend of Korra series. So yeah, I'm not going to go into a big explanation about who these characters are and what this world is, and that's the first thing that I need to get out of the way. This series didn't do that either. So if you're someone out there who's like, well, I've been trying to get my friend into Legend of Korra forever, maybe this comic will be the thing that finally gets them to check it out. Don't do that. They will have no idea what's going on, because the first issue, first freaking page of Volume 1 of the Legend of Korra Turf Wars series literally starts where the series ended. And I know a lot of people out there are wondering, well, did they really need to continue Legend of Korra? Yes, they did. I will be totally honest with you guys. I absolutely loved Avatar The Last Airbender. It was amazing. One of the most brilliant animated series of all time. But if I can be totally honest with you guys, I am not saying this objectively. I'm not saying this like, well, let me take personal taste out of the equation. No, I will admit this is 100% just personal taste. I personally enjoyed Legend of Korra even more. I liked the characters even more. I liked the stuff that they were going up against even more. I liked the twists and turns that the storyline took even more. And I love that it took actually a far more like mature kind of approach to telling these stories. Like Avatar The Last Airbender, I feel like it was really aimed at all ages. But I feel like Legend of Korra is like, yeah, you need to be like PG-13 and up on this one. In fact, there was that moment during the third season where they actually took it off of television and had it only run online. And we're like, oh my god, is it because they're canceling the series? What is the reason behind this? Oh my god, not Nintendo. Nickelodeon is just trying to bury this brilliant show. Why would they do that? And then like 2 episodes after they took it off TV, they had a villain choke someone to death, and it was like, oh, that's why they took it off TV. This thing got dark, and I gotta admit, that kind of did personally appeal to me a little bit more. So yes, I was really looking forward to this series because I enjoy the character so much more and I wanted to see where they went. But I was also really looking forward to this series because when it came to Avatar The Last Airbender, I felt they kind of just wrapped everything up. Except for Zuko's mom. That was really the last one big puzzle piece that they hadn't taken care of. And they did eventually take care of that. They gave that its own comic book, and that was a delightful little comic. That was a very informative read. If you have not checked out Avatar The Search, go ahead, check it out. I give it my full recommendation. But when it came to Legend of Korra, that thing kind of almost ended on a cliffhanger. And I don't mean it ended on a cliffhanger in that Korra and Asami finally got together. I mean, oh, we just ripped open a hole in the fabric of reality, and now there's a makeshift impulse portal going into the spirit realm just here in the middle of our city. Shouldn't we figure something out about that? Shouldn't we do something about that? That, seems like that would raise some problems. So when it came to Avatar: The Last Airbender, yeah, they put out a ton of comic follow-ups to that. But I always looked at it like, yeah, I don't need to read any of that. Oh, we're finally gonna find out what happened to Zuko's mom? I will check that one out. The rest of these, I don't really need to know any about that. That's just extra stuff being thrown in there. This really felt like, no, we had more to tell. And there was more stuff that needed to be told. So we do kind of need this comic book follow-up to tell those stories. And that is one thing that I will say about the Legend of Korra comic series, Turf Wars. Yeah, they absolutely are continuing this story. They do bring up all this stuff about, yeah, there's a giant portal to the spirit realm right here in the center of our major metropolis. And also, you remember the president of this city? Remember how he was kind of a big jerk? We kind of do need to deal with him. That seems like a semi-villain who never really got dealt with all that much. Also, what's Julie doing now? Doesn't feel like she had another big storyline coming up after this. Yeah, this 3-issue storyline really covered pretty much all that. Now, don't get me wrong, I know I'm coming in here and I'm praising Legend of Korra. I'm talking about how much I love it and how happy I am that this series came in here and continued this storyline right where it left off. But I'm not coming in here and just saying, well, I love Legend of Korra, so I will instantly love anything related to Legend of Korra. No, this 3-issue storyline did have some problems, and the first big problem was simply the fact that, yeah, it's only 3 issues. And that's kind of been the standard for these Avatar series. They've been putting out 3 mini trades. Each of them is about 76 pages, which is somewhere between 3 and 4 regular comics. So it isn't just like getting 3 issues. It's like getting somewhere between 9 and 12 issues. So there is a lot of content in here. However, that still only translates to roughly like 3 episodes of the show. And one of the things I absolutely loved about the Legend of Korra series is that every single season there was a brand new villain coming in here with a brand new storyline, a brand new threat, and brand new stuff that the heroes had to deal with, not just with the villain, but also their own personal crises every single season. And I love that this series would always use every single episode to really build that up. And this really kind of feels like, yeah, man, if you could have just continued this more, if you could have just kept building this up. Like at the end of this series, when it gets to the big climactic moment, it doesn't feel really anywhere close to the big climax of any of the seasons of Legend of Korra. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that, yeah, you just don't have the time to build any of this up. You don't have the time to really get to that big, huge moment, whereas all the other seasons, yeah, they had that time. So, yeah, I can't look at this like, oh my goodness, it's just like having Legend of Korra back. No, it's not. It's kind of like when you have an anime that you really love and then it ends and then they come back in there with that one last movie. Just to kind of give you that taste of like, hey, here are all those characters you enjoy again. It's fun, but it's nothing like what the series was. It's kind of what this was. Except it does have the advantage of the fact that they are continuing the story. And I will come in here and reiterate, yeah, man, for what would have equaled basically just 3 episodes of the TV show, they did cover a lot of ground in here. Now, the first volume in this storyline, I'll be honest with you, I thought it was a little bit slow. But the reason why it was a little bit slow is because, yeah, as I said, this book had to address the impact of the very ending of the Legend of Korra series, and that wasn't just, hey, there's a giant hole in the fabric of reality now in the middle of this city. No, it was also that Korra and Asami finally got together. And yeah, you can't have 2 major characters get together and not go around and actually, address that. You can't have them now go around and just go, hey, we're all together, and everybody's just like, yay! And that's it. They had to now go to their family members and actually talk to them. They had to go to all their teachers and talk to them. They had to go to their friends and everybody that they work with and make sure that they knew about this. All very necessary things. Just, it's kind of slow. That's just stuff that you do have to deal with, and there really is no fast way to get through that. Although I will say, I absolutely love seeing everybody's reaction to this. I love seeing how everybody kind of reacted to the news that Korra and Asami were together. I thought there was a great emotional moment between Korra and her parents. But my personal favorites were in Volume 2 of this, when they had to let Tenzin and Beifong know about this. As I said, Volume 1, it was kind of slow, and there's really like no way to speed that up. But in Volume 2, they kind of sped it up because Tenzin's just the cool dad. Tenzin is just the guy who gets along with everybody and just wants to make sure that everybody is living their best life. So when Korra tells Tenzin about it, it's like, oh yeah, I heard about that. Good for you. That was it. And she's like, thanks, Tenzin. I was like, yeah, that's the kind of guy Tenzin is. Tenzin is just cool with everything. But I also love Beifong's reaction, because Beifong is like, wait, so they're together? Yeah. Huh. Anywho, like, that was it. I was like, that's Beifong. That is absolutely Beifong. If it doesn't have to do with work, it's not important. That is the most emotional impact that you would get out of some kind of news like that. It's like, oh, that's fascinating. Anyway, back to this report. I love seeing that reaction from her, and that's something that I do really have to bring up about this series. And honestly, for a Legend of Korra fan, it was the thing that I enjoyed about this series the most. It's that this felt like Legend of Korra. Every single one of these characters, who were already pre-established characters, I could hear their voices when I read this book. Every single one of them acted exactly like you would imagine them acting, to the point where, as I said, it felt at moments like I was hearing the cast read these lines. And yeah, it's because this is written by the same people who worked on the show. Of course they would know how to write them, but it's a different medium. And when you have to translate something from one medium into the next, sometimes you do end up losing stuff about these characters, and that is something that I have to applaud this book for. They didn't lose anything. These characters are still these characters. In fact, probably my favorite character that I was looking forward to seeing in this book was Varric. Because if you watch the show, Varric, he wasn't my favorite character in the show, but he was the character I always look forward to seeing, okay, what's he gonna say next? He was that guy who had the most bizarre dialogue in the entire series. Like, it was hilarious, but at the same time perplexing in just the way that his mind worked. And I loved reading him in here because at the very end of Legend of Korra, he kind of turned over a new leaf. Like, he entered a very different stage of his life, and I was like, alright, well, is that going to change the character? And then I read this and I went, nope, didn't change the character at all. Still the exact same guy, except that now he is focusing on supporting Julie rather than having Julie support him. I love seeing that his life has changed, but it's still the same Varric that we all know and love. And speaking of Julie, holy cow, that character grew. At the very end of Legend of Korra, she changed a lot, because she used to always just be Varric's assistant, but she started to become more of a central figure in the final season of Legend of Korra, and in this little 3-part Turf Wars storyline that they did, they have to address the fact that, yeah, the president of this city, he's a jerk, and he's basically kind of scaring off all the spirits, and he's not doing anything to help this situation of having all these spirits roaming around the city now. We need somebody in there who can actually try and bring peace to this city. Who could do that? Tenzin, you want to do that? No, I'm working with the Wind people right now. I'm working with the Air Tribe right now. I am not going to get back into politics. And then they turn to Julie and was like, well, yeah, you were able to organize everything for Varric. You actually care about people. You actually try and do the right thing. Shouldn't you be the one running for president? And the moment that I looked at that, I went, oh my goodness, that actually would be a great place to take her character. And I never would have thought of that. That is actually such a fascinating turn for her storyline to take. As I said, one of the things that I loved about Legend of Korra is all the little twists and turns that these characters would take every single season. And in just 3 issues, which again would have been the equivalent of just 3 episodes of the show, they were able to accomplish that. Maybe not with some of the major characters, but at least with some characters. So yeah, it did totally give me a taste of what I loved from a full season in just the equivalent of 3 episodes. Just not, you know, a total banquet like I used to get in the old show, but it was still nice. It was still good to get that, and it was still good to watch these characters grow and progress and move on to different stages of their lives. But it's not just all the old characters in there. They actually go into some new territory in here, because one of the things that had always been part of Legend of Korra was the crime syndicates that were running around this city, and you would get little bits of them here and there. They're the central focus of this Turf War storyline. They're the main thing that our heroes are trying to stop. And I actually kind of enjoyed it that this thing that had always kind of been in the background of the show now kind of got its moment to shine. It was their moment to actually be the big villains. However, I will say the big villain of the entire storyline, this is where I have to come in with my really big negative for this entire book. I love the villains in Legend of Korra. As I said, just speaking personally, not objectively, just to my own personal taste, I like Legend of Korra better than I like Avatar: The Last Airbender, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that I just love those villains so much more. Like over in Avatar: The Last Airbender, yeah, you had Azula, who, holy cow, she was an amazing villain. But the Fire Lord was just the big guy who they had to beat at the end. He was the big final boss. He was Bowser. He was Ganondorf. That was it. Actually, Ganondorf had way more personality than the Fire Lord did. Fire Lord was just really big monster dude. That was it. I thought the villains every single season in Legend of Korra were stunning. In fact, they're actually really creative too. This is something that I didn't know when I was watching the series. It was something I found out like years later and it blew my mind. But every single one of the villains are inspired by different forms of government. Like, go and look that up. I'm not going to go into too many details about, but it's actually really creative how they came up with all that. But yeah, so I absolutely love the villains in Legend of Korra. The villain in this kind of stinks. He is bad. He is just a guy who was a really good fighter working for the mobs that were running the city. And then when the spirits started roaming around the city, one of them attacked him and they kind of fused with him. So he was now part spirit. And I was like, oh man, this mob boss now has spirit powers? What are you gonna do with that? One of his arms turned into a snake tail. And that was it. Yeah, it is weak. It is, I can't, I hate coming in here and criticizing it this harshly, but it's a weak villain. There is no real backstory to him. There's no real motivation other than, yeah, I'm just trying to get more power. Oh no, now half my face looks like a snake's face. I'm a monster. I will take revenge and do the thing I was already gonna do, but even more now. And again, I kept looking at it, like, okay, you're half spirit now. Holy cow, that means that this guy, who just used to be a really skilled hand-to-hand fighter, he's now gonna have powers that can go up against the Avatar. No, he has no extra powers or anything. He's still a really skilled fighter, and he now has like a whip arm. So he's got a lot longer reach. That's it. And then in like the third volume, not to spoil anything for you guys, but in the third volume, there comes a moment in which they have to fight in poison, and he can't be poisoned anymore. He has poison immunity now. That's about it. That's all they really do with that. Yeah, it's not good. In fact, it's kind of bad. Yeah, and for a series where the villains were always one of the main things I look forward to, yeah, I gotta come in here and say this villain was lame. It was. I really hate coming in here and negatively critiquing this thing that harshly on anything, but yeah, the villain is not good in this. Like, at all. However, there are some other new characters that get introduced in here who I actually did really enjoy. For example, as I said, they're dealing with all the little mobs that are running around the city, and there comes this moment in which Asami gets visited by these mobsters from this organization known as the Creeping Crystals. And Asami has been tasked with building some of the houses for the people who lost their homes when that giant explosion happened at the end of the last season of Legend of Korra, and it ended up opening up that rift into the spirit realm. She has to build actually some new homes for them, and of course, if you're getting into constructing some real estate in a major city, the mob's gonna want in on that. So they come by and they're like, yeah, it'd be a shame if anything happened to this. And I actually kind of really did enjoy that moment because it was like, oh, this is probably the stuff that Asami has to deal with all the time. Korra has to go out there and stop the other evil benders and stop big spirit monsters and gods and do all that. This is the kind of stuff that she probably has to stop every single day in her business. It was kind of nice seeing, oh, she's got her own thing going on over here. But the Creeping Crystals, their leader, I love her design. And in the third volume, you actually kind of see it's like, yeah, I'm a bad guy, but that doesn't mean that you are a bad guy. It's, yeah, you know, I'll do some horrible stuff, but I have my rules in place, and if you need some help for this certain thing, then yeah, our interests will overlap and I can work with you. And honestly, I really want to see her return. I really want to see her become that character who's a villain for a couple storylines, but then she kind of turns around and is like, oh, okay, well, you know, I guess my organization could start doing more good and actually maybe working with you guys on the up and up. You know, kind of be like the Vegeta of this storyline. I actually think that she has a fantastic design, and the fact that she specializes in crystals that grow when they touch organic matter, and that's the stuff that she bends. So basically she uses crystals that can imprison people when she bends them around them. Yeah, it's a very kind of like, it's basic earthbending, but then with that little twist that makes her memorable. So yeah, I absolutely want to see that character return. She is actually a great addition to this cast. So yeah, to kind of recap the positives in here, I absolutely love the way that the characters are portrayed. I love that they picked up right where the TV show left off, and they continued that storyline, and they continued it kind of in the natural direction. Like every single thing that happened in these 3 volumes feels like what needed to happen right at the end of that series. Like, okay, Korra and Asami are together. You kind of have to go around and talk to everybody about that. You have to have them kind of like get to realize, oh wow, this really is, we're kind of in a new stage of our relationship with each other. We do have to kind of deal with that and become comfortable with where we are in our lives. Yes, these 3 issues were able to do that. So yes, they continued that naturally, but also the giant rip and tear into the spirit realm. Yeah, man, you have to address that. And I love that they kind of address like the political and the financial side of that, in that, okay, how does the president deal with that? How do the people building the houses for all the people who lost their homes deal with that? What does the public think of Korra? Because they kind of blame her for ripping that giant hole open. Which, man, that actually made me really mad when the public started turning on Korra. Because, like, she literally, like, yes, okay, a tiny neighborhood got destroyed and now there's a hole open to the spirit realm. But was that or the entire city gets destroyed? Come on, man. She did the best that she could there. That's another thing from the show that I love them continuing in here. How quickly the public was always willing to turn on Korra. So they continue that in here as well. Shows that, yeah, Korra still, she's got a way to go before she gets everybody to trust her on this. So I absolutely love that they continued that. And yes, the triple threats and all the other mobs that were in this city who were always kind of a thing in the background, I love that they finally got kind of their moment to shine and be the big villains in here. So I really enjoyed all that, but the villain wasn't really good at all. And in a series where the villains were always kind of the main attractions, yeah, it is kind of a shame. But also, you know, the storyline never hit any of those heights that the TV show did, but I can't blame them for that because, yeah, it was only 3 books. That was it. You would need at least 10 books in order to be able to get a storyline all the way up to the heights that it got in the old TV series. So I'm not blaming them for that. That's just, you know, hey, that's just what you have to deal with. And I think they did the best with what they could. One other thing that I didn't get a chance to really talk about is the art. I will admit, when I picked up the first volume, the art was kind of odd to me because it is so different from how it was in the show. It wasn't anything even remotely close to what it looked like in the TV show, but by the time that I got halfway through volume 2, at least by the time that I started volume 3, I actually really enjoyed it. It took some getting used to, but by the time that I got used to it, yeah, I was able to adapt to it. It doesn't have like the really sharp defined lines of the animation in the TV show. It's got kind of a softer touch to it, almost like a sketch touch to it. Like it makes it look a little bit more raw. But again, by the time that I got to volume 3, I actually started really enjoying it, and I actually really dug the art style in here. Never really enjoyed the look of the villain, but again, that just comes down to what they did with the villain. I thought they could have done more than just half his face as a snake, but, you know, again, I think that has to do with the fact that I just didn't really enjoy the villain. Everybody else in there, I thought Korra was drawn beautifully. There's a lot of moments in here in which they have to go out to, like, parties, and Korra has to put on, like, official Water Tribe outfits that I had never seen in the series before. And I was like, oh man, that's actually a really creative outfit that they came up with her. And there's a lot of moments during the fight scenes in which one of the things that the Avatar series was known for was how well choreographed all of the bending was. Yeah, you can't really choreograph something in a comic the same way that you do in a TV show because you can't show movement in a comic. It's still images. but I still got that sense of motion from whenever I saw them bending in here. I still got that sense of, okay, Korra is doing this move, Korra is doing that move, this character is doing that move, Mako is doing this thing over here. I could still feel the movement to it, and that's the big important thing to drawing an Avatar series. So yeah, they absolutely were able to nail that. So again, took some time getting used to the artwork, but I did enjoy it by the end. So there you go, Legend of Korra fans. You guys have been wanting me to talk about this book ever since the first volume of it came out last August, and now that's all completely wrapped up. And also, as I said, because nothing at all came out this week, I felt like it was finally the perfect time for me to come in here and talk about that series. So if you like this series, if you didn't like this series, if you had problems with it, if you thought there were great things in there that I didn't talk about, just let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. And for all you people out there who are not Avatar fans, who have never checked out Legend of Korra, go and watch those shows. They are so freaking good. If you are not a fan of any of those shows, sorry that we had to kind of dedicate an episode of Comic Class this week to talking about something that you know nothing about and you understood none of the things I was talking about. But next week we will be back with a regular episode of Comic Class. So make sure that you click that subscribe button to make sure that you don't miss it. Or you can always follow me on Twitter, Twitch, and Tumblr to know when a brand new episode goes up. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Come back next week. Bye.